Thanks very much for staying with me. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, first responders to DR Congo's Ebola outbreak say that they're struggling to source basic supplies needed to turn the tide on a disease that has killed at least 139 after having spread silently for weeks. The outbreak centred in Ituri province, which is still in the midst of a security crisis. To break it all down, I'm now joined by the country's Minister of Communications, Patrick Muyaya. Also, Kenyan campaigners give their government an ultimatum, deliver on promises to bring down the number of femicides and better protect women vulnerable to violence and abuse, or brace for nationwide protests. But first, epidemiologists working on the front line of the Ebola outbreak in eastern DR Congo say that logistical gaps are throwing up major hurdles to the handling of the crisis. It's suspected as having caused at least 139 deaths from about 600 probable cases. But although the World Health Organization's declared this a public health emergency of international concern, on Wednesday, its chief clarified that the situation is not a pandemic-scale crisis and that although the regional risks are high, the global ones are low. The complexities, though, of responding to the outbreak are compounded as it spreads through parts of Ituri province, where communities have long had to contend with the threat of armed groups. So for more on this, I'm joined by Patrick Muyaya, DR Congo's Minister for Communications and Media. Minister, thanks very much for making the time to speak to me. Now, your country's had a pretty tough time of it over the last year. You know, you've had the M23 crisis. Now you have this Ebola outbreak. And one is affecting the other. So how are you getting help? How are you getting help, monitoring and supplies into cities still at the heart of that M23 crisis, cities like Goma? How are you getting what is needed into the areas most affected by the outbreak?
So, but the first question is that what I can say is DRC, we have quite experience on how we can manage this kind of crisis. It's the 17 times that you are facing this kind of situation, and you have the expertise it's required to give answer on that. So since the beginning, I think it was the first case was recorded on May 5, and 10 days later, we've been able as government to declare officially that we have this outbreak of Ebola, and my colleague from Health was in ground in Ituri especially to see the way we can start our response. To come specifically about the situation in Goma, what is very sad is that we noticed that Rwanda decided to close the border. Remember that this part of the DRC is under occupation of Rwanda. The airport is closed. How come you can? They speak the fact that the international rules about like this question of epidemic prohibit those kind of decision. So how can you imagine the airport is closed, Rwanda closed their border? How can we give the right response sometimes about the case we've seen in Goma?
Of course, what are you doing on the Congolese side? I mean, that clearly compounds the problem.
It's clear that we have the response. We are working. We have international partners. But I think the best way for us to deal with the situation in Goma will be if Rwanda withdraw its troop and its M23 just get out of the way of the managing of this crisis. So we'll be able to send our people there to make sure they get the right element so they can continue the examination, the investigation.
So you've already had direct contact with the M23 to allow this?
No, not at the moment. You said previously that there was more than 139 people died. I think it's probability. We are investigating about all those cases, and then in a transparent way, we'll come to confirm those who die because of this. Because of this new strain we call Bundibugyo.
And so I don't understand. Do you suspect that number might be less or more?
No, because we cannot confirm for the moment. We are doing investigation because we register, of course, certain number of deaths inside a community. we should make sure that those people who died, to get the confirmation they died because of the strain. Because most of the time, today, for instance, to give just a view, I was talking with my colleague from Earth before coming here. We have 847 contact people we are trying to find because those people had some contact with some people who've been infected. And for today, we have, like, under treatment, we have 67 suspected cases at the hospital. We have 51 people who are confirmed having this strain. And then we have 626 suspect cases that we are following. It means that we have, like, this large number of people to make sure we get in that the best way to tackle or to manage this virus, to make sure it's not be transmitted to another amount of population.
I'm sorry, I still don't understand, because, I mean, particularly bearing in mind that this strain spread for several weeks before it was officially recognized, are you saying that regardless of how many numbers...
We should work, that's the investigation will come to confirm, especially about all those deaths. Because what we did, as I was saying previously, the first case reported to Health Minister was on May 5th. And from May 5th, we were able to do investigation to be able to confirm that certain number of those cases were infected by the strain we call Bundibugyo. And then from there, we start to bring our response. That's why on 17 May, the health minister went in Ituri, in Bunia, not far from Mongwalu, because Mongwalu is like almost 2,000 kilometers far from Kinshasa. That's the epicenter of the current outbreak.
So I'm so sorry to cut you off. It's just because I don't have you for very long, and I know that there'll be a lot of people really wanting to get a bit more of an understanding of the mechanics of what's going on. So, I mean, the details is super interesting. However, I think, you know, as you pointed out, this is the 17th time that DR Congo has dealt with an outbreak. You know, even if this strain is an uncommon one, are there not, particularly when it comes to communicating the risks, the changes that perhaps community behavior that need to happen when this kind of emergency happens? Why weren't more lessons learned, even on the communication side, in terms of lines between the government and health authorities to affected communities to know how to respond when the emergency is flagged?
That was, I was telling you previously, that we just like finished with the previous strain we called Zaire. I think it was in last August or September in Bulape, in Kasai. It means that we've been following those kind of situation. But this one, before confirming that it's another strain, we should do investigation first. The starting point of this was in Ituri, and in Ituri, just to give you a view, they don't have like any laboratory who can confirm directly that this was this strain. We should send it to Kinshasa. And all that was done between May 5th and May 15, where we'll be able to confirm at national level. And then from there, between May 5th and May 15, people, especially in the provincial level, took some measure. Because the first things you do when you have those kind of strain is to make sure you stop the chain of contamination, of transmission. It's not like it was with COVID. It's not something you need to wear a mask. It's something we should just respect certain measure. Washing hands, avoiding to be in troop, avoiding being in contact with when we do burial. Remember, in Africa, usually when it comes to burial, we are in contact, and those kind of behavior, we did make sure that no one in those areas could behave the way we were behaving before in order to stop the transmission of the virus.
Thank you so much, Minister of Communication and Media for DR Congo, Patrick Muyaya, for giving us a bit of an insight for some of the problems that you're facing in dealing with the latest Ebola outbreak. Well, moving on now to Kenya, where a problem with femicide is not a new one. Over the last few years, there have been sporadic protests, calls for justice and protection for victims often targeted by the men that they should be able to trust the most. Despite government promises of action, little material shift has been delivered. Another round of awareness has recently been sparked by several high-profile killings. One of gospel singer Rachel Wandeto, who was doused with petrol and burned alive. Women's rights organisations say that enough is enough. Many gathered in Nairobi on Wednesday to demand government follow-through. If nothing's done, they say, they will launch a nationwide movement within a fortnight. Christine Kungu from Kenya's Federation of Women Lawyers spoke to our Bastien Renouy.
Many women have been killed here in Kenya during the past weeks and months. Can you walk us through some of these cases, and do they have anything in common?
What we're seeing is a systematic pattern whereby almost weekly we hear a young woman from the university is missing. A few days later, you hear the body has been found somewhere. When you hear investigations happening, you hear the university saying that there was a fight between that lady and a boyfriend or a partner. It has been systematic or intimate violence, whereby a woman is engaged in a relationship, and then you hear that the woman has been found dead in an Airbnb apartment. Or like this one now that we're seeing that is worrying us, politically instigated, whereby you're not supposed to have your own freedom of expression. So that when the people feel that you are supporting the current president for another term, they come after you because you're a woman. So if this is not watched, it will get out. I know Kenya, the year before elections, women and girls are targeted in, again, what we call election gender-based violence.
So is the Kenyan government interested in protecting women, and what can it do exactly?
The government must clearly show that they're not toothless. We cannot be having such crimes, such heinous crimes, to the extent that you hear a lady was found in an Airbnb, her body parts are put in a sack. What kind of a country are we living in? And why would our leaders not speak up? What is so hard about the government having a policy that will allow the institutions to perhaps talk about it? What could be wrong in terms of why are our students, our young ones, committing such crimes? And then also go to the other areas within the communities, try and also investigate what is the cause of this. So there is a preventive approach, and then there is a after crimes have been committed. Why can't we see the relevant state actors in terms of investigative, in terms of prosecuting, also doing their part?
During the press conference, you mentioned an issue with a narrative used by politicians, by journalists. Can you explain that, and what can be the impact of this narrative?
When that happens, when people question why was the victim dressed in that manner, it is a very wrong approach. That is what we call victim shaming, victim blaming. Because I don't feel that because you're dressed, anyone is entitled to sexually do anything offensive to you, be it rape for the girl, for the women, be it defilement. I believe that in the first place, we as a culture or we as a community, when we want to talk about blaming the victims in that manner because of the way they are dressed, that's where the problem begins. It gives the perpetrators more power to say that it is because of the way she was dressed. It is because she was dating a married man. Those are not accurate facts. The facts are, it is against the law to do that. We need to be very clear about what the law says. The moment we shift the focus on the victim, that is where we go wrong as a country. Unfortunately, even the police to date are not gender sensitive.
And finally, you plan to organize a nationwide campaign in the next 14 days. What do you want to do exactly, and what is the goal?
We want to bring this country to a place where nothing happens when that protest happens, that we completely shut down this country, even if it's just for 3 hours, so that clearly they can know our voices must be heard. Clearly, femicide is getting out of hand. If we don't do that, then they'll think that it's business as usual. It cannot be business as usual. Women and girls must not be killed anymore, and victim blaming must be shut down. So clearly, if the government will not fight for women and girls, we in the civil society, we will do what we need to do for us to be heard, and our voices, and the voices of these women and girls who have been killed and their families will also be part of that protest.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care.
L'an dernier, France 24 a atteint
a historic number
of digital views.
75 مليون مشترك.
Que nos siguen en las redes sociales.
Avec 2 milliards 600 millions de vidéos vues.
Proof that you share our passion.
بالأخبار الدولية.
Verificada e independiente.
شكراً.
Merci.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you for your confidence.